Mauga is Blizzard's 39th hero, and while I personally really love his design, he has some huge problems that, if not fixed, will make him one of the weakest heroes on release. But when watching him, he seems good and fairly flashy. In a real rank lobby, he will fall apart, and there are several reasons for this that we'll talk about in this video. If Blizzard wants this hero to be viable and not have a Lifeweaver 2.0 situation, they need to fix these key weaknesses. Now, it says that less than 20% of you are subscribed, so please subscribe, and let's get into it. Now, the first problem is that Mauga is fragile. While he's a big burly guy, you would think that Mauga would be very, very hard to kill, but with his gigantic hitbox, he constantly tanks unmitigated damage. Now, in order to counteract this, he constantly pokes from range and gains health from people he crits that he lit on fire. The big problem, though, he doesn't gain close to enough health to displace the damage he takes in a normal engagement. With no armor or no other way to protect himself, he simply frickin' falls over. This means that Mauga needs to either play incredibly passive or get heal-botted non-stop. He has no way to keep himself alive, unlike many other heroes like Sigma, Orisa, or Zarya. If you look away from him for a second as a support in a poke battle, he actually just disappears and dies out of nowhere. Compare this to abilities like Sigma Shield, Kinetic Grasp, Fortify, and Javelin Spin that can protect these tanks. In fact, the vast majority of the tank roster has a good way to protect themselves, good mobility, or both, and Mauga doesn't really have any. The next problem with Mauga is Mauga has no strong identity. If you play Mauga, you perceive him as a poke tank, and while his poke is decent and can be strengthened if they buffed his health, armor so he wouldn't fall apart, the rest of his kit doesn't make a ton of sense. He has a crowd control slam that incentivizes him to go close range, but the second he gets into range, he legitimately dies instantly. So in competitive lobbies, you will often just use it to run away or close in only after you have won the fight, but other poke heroes like Sigma can just close in with their other survival abilities, and a CC slam is not needed to close in after you win the fight. And right now, with Mauga's kit and his identity, you would think he's a character that could brawl, but right now he's really bad at brawling and just dies. And compared to the other poke options, he severely lags behind as the most resource dependent option in the game. If we compare him to brawl heroes, one of the few heroes that doesn't have a great mitigation mechanic, Junker Queen, gets rewarded for closing in the gap by gaining health and getting carnage resets. What does Mauga get for closing in that gap? He gets a one-way ticket to the spawn room. Now, the next problem with Mauga is that some abilities make him just straight up cry. Mauga is big, as we established, but tons of cooldowns can not only hit him, but affect him even harder. Because of his reliance on his healing, a nade actually ruins him, and will get him killed in the neutral or just when he moves in at all. His charge doesn't protect him from nade, and he just eats it and then dies when he tries to close it in the gap. On top of that, other CC just destroy him. While yes, he's invulnerable during his charge, it's just very easy to just hit him with the CC post-charge and then kill him. Sleep, Rock, Doom Punch, Javelin. While every tank has a hard time in the CC nade world right now, Mauga is the least equipped to deal with these things out of the vast majority of the roster, and skilled use of any of these abilities is just going to completely shut Mauga down. Now, last up is Ultimate, and there's some aspects of the Ultimate that's really good. Being able to lock people in, force a C9, or combo, really, really good, but one of the big problems is that it locks him in, and like I said, he has a really hard time surviving. The second he traps enemies, they're all gonna focus him down, use all their cooldowns on him, and then kill him, and he can't run away. So it either feels like a win more ult, where you already won the fight, you go and you ult, and then you would have won it anyways, you didn't need to ult, or it's an ult where you do combo it and kill them all, but you definitely die before things happen, so it just feels really unsatisfying. So we stated all of his big weaknesses and problems with the character, but is it fixable? Are there ways to fix it? And the thing is, while he has these weaknesses, it's important to understand that there are many ways to quote-unquote fix a weakness. You can have a hero that has a gaping weakness that you don't touch, but strengthen a part of their kit so much that it enables the hero to thrive regardless of that weakness. As an example, let's say you just took his bullet damage and tripled it, it would make him good pretty much no matter what else you did to the character. I don't think this is a good way to balance, but it is important for you to understand that this is a possibility, and there isn't one road to fixing a character or making them viable. That being said, I think a cohesive kit with balanced power across the kit is typically the best thing that you could do for a character and for balance as a whole. Now, the first thing that you need to do is make him more survivable. And let's start off with some armor and perhaps give him a little bit more HP for hitting crits slightly. So he gets a little bit more health and he has some armor to protect him from giant chunks of damage. You could also give him a higher max HP. I mean, he is the thickest hero in the game, so I think he kind of deserves a little bit more HP. I wouldn't mind him having the most HP base out of every character, period. You could also give him more incentive to hit big crowd control slams. Give him a small amount of armor whenever he crowd controls multiple people with his slam, and then this will allow him to be a bit more survivable when everyone inevitably dumps all their damage and abilities into him after slam. But maybe you could base this only on how many people you connect with, so if you try for it and miss and you're counting on it to hit so you get more armor, you could just die very easily. And you could balance this as needed, making him more survivable but maybe doing less damage or less CC. There's definitely a spectrum you can move this on, but the ultimate goal is to make him rewarded for hitting big slams and not fall over when he does. The last thing they can do to make him more survivable is just to decrease his hitbox. I mean, it's just way too damn big as shown here. The next thing they could do is give him extra ability protection. So while Mauga gets crowd control protection mid-dash, what if when he connected with enemies, he gets an additional half a second of anti-crowd control per person slammed? This could be really minimal, but it also makes him rewarding for hitting chunks of people. But if he misses, he gets no armor and no crowd control. So like, let's say you slam like a group of 3 people, you would have that anti-CC effect on you. There would be a little visual cue to show that you can't be CC'd, and then maybe he would say something like, haha, I'm invincible, or something like that. And then you know that for the next like 2 seconds, you can't be CC'd. So you have to focus on the characters that can hit you. Like if there's an Ana, you want to kill her first, because otherwise in like half a second or a second or whatever the case may be, you are gonna get slept if you don't finish her off. So it kind of creates that dynamic where you have to decide who is the person you focus post slam. Now also, this doesn't have to be in conjunction with the other changes, but it is another idea that could be, but you would have to balance it to make sure it's not overpowered, right? You would have to take some things away, add some things, you get the picture. Next up, they should fix his gun consistency. I do think that his spread can be a bit inconsistent, and this is something they can tweak over time, and they should probably reduce or remove the amount he's slowed when he's shooting his guns. He's a big ass target that's easy to focus down, he's easy to hit with abilities, and then when he wants to poke and shoot, he's even slower, so he's even easier to shoot and easier to hit. It definitely doesn't make him more survivable or aid to his kit at all. Now, a really easy one to do is just to fix his ultimate, make it a little bit stronger. Right now, it should not lock him up, and I think there could be some other effect that maybe makes him more tough if he's inside his ultimate, so he can pop it, and if he stays inside his ultimate, he's a little bit stronger. If he wants to leave it, he's losing that benefit, but it's at least allowing him to leave if he needs to. Now, the last one is a bigger balance change around the fundamental characters in the game that affect him. So like changes to how Nade, Discord, and other CC affects tanks. So just like how Sleep Dart affects tanks less, you could have it to where Nade isn't on them for as long, or other burning effects. Discord can't be on them as long, and other CC affects them even less than it already does with the tank passive. The only problem with this approach is when you change balance this way, it affects everyone. So maybe some other characters like Hammond or Doomfist will become too powerful if you change how this affects some things. So I think if you're gonna do this, it shouldn't be across the board. It should be done slowly over time, where you're slowly making certain abilities weaker against tanks to more balance out the experience of tanks. But this is definitely a completely separate discussion, and one that I don't know if they should do in the immediate to fix Mauga, balancing everything around him rather than just balancing him to be viable as he is now. Now keep in mind, with every new character, there's always a slippery slope where if you buff him too much, he can become completely overpowered, and I think these are just some of the problems and the suggestions that I would implement if I could to make him a bit more powerful. But of course, not all of them at the same time, maybe 1 or 2 of them, or a combination of them, but weaker or in half measured states. Definitely let me know if you think I hit it or missed the mark with Mauga, and any changes that you would suggest to the character down below. Do me a solid and smash that like, subscribe if you enjoy the content. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.